Because if I care enough about them at a visit, then I'm going to care enough about them while they go through their 4 years. So,
we're done. This is great.
You're listening to The Higher Ed Marketer, the podcast for marketing professionals in higher education. Join us every week as we talk to the industry's greatest minds in student recruitment, donor relations, marketing trends, new technologies, and much more. If you're looking for conversations centered around where marketing in higher ed is going, this podcast is for you. Let's get into the show.
After today's conversation, you will also know that courageous and bold leadership pays off. My name is Troy Singer with Ring Digital. I am with Bart Kaler of Kaler Solutions, and this is the Higher Ed Marketer Podcast. And today, we have a very inspiring and informational conversation with Dr. Jeremy Taylor. He is the Vice President of Enrollment at Defiance College, and really, he is a gentleman that Bart met at a conference a few months ago, I believe, and he is someone that has only been in the enrollment space for 2 years, and you'll be able to see the reason why he has had great success in his short tenure in his position.
Yeah, I was just blown away when I first met Jeremy, and I think that the fact that, you know, when they shared that his first year they were able to grow enrollment by 78%, kind of blew me away. It made me stop and take notice, and the fact that they're on to even a greater, a growth rate for the fall of 25 has really impressed me. And so I wanted to get him on the show to talk about how did you pull that off? How did you do that? Because there's a ton of schools that are eking out 1, 2, 3% increases and sometimes slipping. And so he really kind of brings it. And I mean, it's not rocket science. He doesn't kind of have a bunch of crazy things, but he has some really good hard work and just very common sense things that I think are working well for him. And it's a great episode.
You will be inspired like me to follow this man into battle.
Yeah.
Here's our conversation with Dr. Jeremy Taylor. Jeremy, we would love for you to kick off our conversation today by sharing something that you've recently learned that our audience might find interesting, and tells us a little bit about you.
Well, I'm a historian by trade, but I like random facts. And just the other day I was reading, and it's probably the most random thing I've ever read in my life. But I found out that it's actually true that if you have red hair, you have to let your anesthesiologist know, because they need more anesthesia than like people without red hair. Something genetic with people with red hair.
Wow.
I didn't think it was true. I went on Snopes. I went on a bunch of other websites, and I saw that, and I was like, that's the most random thing I've ever heard in my life. So, like, if you dye your hair red, you have to tell them I'm not a natural redhead, or if you're a natural redhead, you need to let your doctor know. Same thing with dentists. I don't have that problem, of course, but yeah.
A service announcement to all of our red-headed listeners out there, if you did not know that,
well,
courtesy of Jeremy. So thank you, Jeremy Taylor. He is the Vice President of Enrollment Management at Defiance College. And again, the reason why we're talking to Jeremy today is he has had a large amount of success in turnarounds in enrollment. And what I would love to start our conversation is kind of understanding those challenges from the beginning. So, Jeremy, when you took the role of Vice President of Enrollment Management, what were some of the key challenges that needed immediate attention at Defiance?
Yeah, so Defiance, like a lot of small colleges, have been struggling with enrollment for years. The market share had dwindled. There's a lot of competition. And so Defiance, really, we just suffered several years of low enrollment. Our headcount had dropped down. And so, and also, too, we had our discount rate was out of control. So even though we were bringing in less students, we weren't necessarily bringing in the revenue that we needed to do, which creates budgetary challenges. And so I was, I guess, fortunate enough that 2 years ago, our president tapped me on the shoulder and asked me to come in and lead enrollment management. And I think, so there are a couple of, I guess, specific challenges is, one, I'm not an enrollment management person. I grew up through the faculty ranks. I was a history professor. I was a dean, coached football for a little while, so I knew a little bit about recruiting. I knew how to get on the phone with a kid. So one of the big challenges I personally faced was learning the enrollment management business and learning some of the lingo and some of the just stuff that happens with enrollment management. Now, I also look at that as an advantage because I'm not an enrollment guy, so I wasn't tied to just tradition. But then also, too, a big challenge that we face is we had to analyze where our position was in the market, like who we were, make sure that we were affordable, make sure that we were competitive. I needed to build a great team.
Right.
Need to figure out a way to increase revenue. And then also, too, I needed to streamline processes to make sure that we were operating effectively and efficiently. So it was a big challenge. And so, yeah, we faced it head on. So.
And for the sake of everybody on the call, and this is one of the reasons. I mean, I met you. Just for everybody knows, I met Jeremy at an Ardeo conference, and have had a chance to get to know him a little bit. The numbers were just really kind of impressed me, and maybe, I mean, and it's all it's all small schools versus large schools, but you have to understand the percentage differences. So maybe just kind of fill everybody a little bit on that as we continue our conversation.
Yeah. So absolutely. So the year before I took over in enrollment management, we brought in a freshman class of 152 students when we were expecting a much larger class. The year before that, it was 170. And again, our president's goal is to try to get to 1,000 students. So in our first year, last year, I guess this class of 24-25, that was our first fall class that we brought in. And we were able to grow our enrollment by 78%. We brought in about 273 this year. We're on track to bring in a much bigger class next year. We were able to drop our discount rate by about 16%. We were able to maintain a high GPA among our entering class. And so doing those things, I mean, it's really easy to go quickly and just open up the floodgates, let anybody in, blow up your discount rate, and yes, you can grow enrollment. But one of the things that I was challenged with by our president, one of the things that I really wanted to do is make sure that we're building a sustainable base that we can continue to do this in the future.
So one of the questions I have with that, Jeremy, because I mean, I know that you had several long-term initiatives that were given to you by the president. I mean, you just kind of outlined some of those, but you also had to kind of get those short-term wins to keep your team motivated, to keep your weekly numbers looking good. How did you kind of prioritize that? What was your vision that you would kind of say, this is the way I looked at it, and it might be unconventional because of the way that you didn't have that background in enrollment management?
Yeah, so it's a weird kind of analogy I look, but sometimes I joke around that, the difference between a history PhD and a medical PhD is we publish our mistakes where they bury theirs, right? We do have some stuff that's in common, right? Like, I kind of looked at it like, wow, I've just come up onto a major accident and I've got to triage what do we need to fix, right? And so I look at the short-term stuff as the triage, right? So the immediate thing we needed to do is we needed to make sure that we were affordable and that we would be able to get past the initial gate of students. So one of the things that a lot of schools have done is they keep raising their tuition, at the same time they're raising their discount rate.
Right.
Well, the year before I took over, we had passed a 9% tuition increase, and we were over the $50,000 mark. So one of the things the short-term thing that I recognize is that if we want to be competitive, we need to get to a competitive price point, because we were losing students just from the second that they saw what our tuition was and what the cost of attendance was going to be, even though we were discounting at a tremendous amount of money. They didn't understand that.
And they don't know it when they look at the webpage.
No, absolutely not. They absolutely have no idea. So I went to the Board of Trustees, and again, our Board of Trustees and our president were very willing to do the things that kind of countermand what reason would say. And so we went and said, we need to lower tuition. We need to lower tuition, but by lowering tuition, we're actually going to increase our revenue because we're going to decrease our net tuition revenue. So that was one of the first immediate things that we did that very first fall. The second thing is we were like a lot of small schools, we rely heavily on athletics as a means to recruit. We were a Division III athletic program, and we realized that, yes, D3 is great among the NCAA, but we were more in line with what the NAIA does, and we wanted to be able to offer athletic scholarships. So in the same exact board meeting, in addition to ask for tuition decrease, we also asked to move to the NAIA, and they made those bold moves. And so, I mean, those are two of the most immediate things that we did that had to do that. But also, too, this is also very unconventional, is I went to every one of our vendors that we had and every contractor that we were working with and said, why do I need you? What is my ROI? Because we've had you for this contract for the past 3 years, but our enrollment's been low.
Right.
So we did things like we brought financial aid matrixing in-house as opposed to using a consultant. We did more marketing in-house. Those are the short-term things. But we needed to build stuff for the long term. And so, again, we put some different plans in place, like our partnership with Ardeo is a long-term kind of program.
Right.
We've also implemented some programs to also try to bring in to build among our local community. So, like trying to recruit locally a little bit more. Right. We created a thing called the 1850 Promise, which gives students in the 7-county area an opportunity to get a debt-free degree. Those kind of things that are long range are going to help us be able to sustain this. So,
what I really like about that is just the fact that there's some schools that when they find themselves in the situation that you guys did, let's put a committee together, let's talk about this, and they talk about it ad nauseum, and you lose 3, 4, 5 more years, and then you're closing shop. And I like the boldness that your board took to just say, oh, we need to switch athletic conferences? Check, done. Oh, we need to reduce it below 50,000? Check, done. I mean, I think that's some bold leadership too, not only on your part, but on the part of the president and the board. So I applaud that too.
Yeah, well, I was going to say, now, we did heavy, deep, like white papers and dives and data. Sure. It's all data driven, right? Like, particularly when we were looking at the tuition increase, we knew that we didn't want to be at the bottom. We didn't want to go all the way down to where, like some schools, when they hear the word tuition reset is such a negative thing.
Yeah.
That's why I say it's not a tuition reset, it was a tuition reduction. It was basically making sure that we are in the right market for where we need to be at so that we can be competitive, we can still offer a great value, but we also aren't losing people to the sticker shock.
Right. Right. That's exactly right.
Jeremy, with that, can you share a specific tactic or initiative that you either brought in-house or maybe implemented that exceeded expectations?
Yeah, and I think one is, again, there's a lot of examples, right? But I think one kind of goes back to another challenge that I didn't mention. Last year they passed the FLSA requirement, the overtime requirement. Of course, it's debunked now.
Right.
But what that caused to happen is we had to change up kind of our structure for our admissions office, and many of our admissions counselors ended up going hourly rather than salary. So we had to figure out how do we continue to provide service to our students? How do we continue to get outreach? Well, one of the things that we did is we signed an agreement with Ardeo. That's how I ended up being Bart. But we signed an agreement with Ardeo to create our DC Advantage program, which is a loan repayment assistance program. And what this does is it basically allows the college to take out an insurance policy on our students to say, if you graduate and you make less than $45,000 a year from Defiance College, then we will help you repay your loans, right? It's an assistance program. That did two things for us. One, there's a big problem with debt averseness. Students are debt averse now. There's a lot of narrative in the public about how college debt is bad. The second thing is Ardeo, as a partner, one of the things that they do is they reach out and they market to our students. They contact them. They have a great call center. And so having a call center that can call thousands of students within our funnel frees up the time for our admissions counselors and our athletic coaches to follow those leads that our DAO has provided, and they provide great call notes for our team, so they can focus instead of having to spend their time calling every single inquiry in our funnel. We let our DAO do that, and then our admissions counselors and coaches could go out and actually follow up on the good leads.
I love that.
That was a great. And so what that did is that basically expanded our reach, and so that definitely exceeded our expectations. The number of people that they called, it just kept our name in their in those students in the forefront of their minds. So strategic partnerships like that, which are going to provide a great ROI for us, like that's one example among many that really exceeded our expectations.
Yeah, I love that. And before we move on from the turnaround, one other question I have, because I know a lot of times when I've seen turnarounds or bold leadership or you've got data backed information, but you are making decisions and you're moving different directions. Sometimes you kind of internally, it's not always, sunshines and lollipops with everybody around. So how did you guys deal with that? And were there any challenges that some of the stakeholders, whether it was faculty or staff or, parents or students, how did that turn out?
Oh, absolutely. Again, I think I'm fortunate that I have a faculty background. I'm a tenured faculty member, right? And I've sat in the faculty meetings and I've seen the enrollment guy come in and talk about, we're going to do this and we're going to grow our enrollment. We're going to do this. And there's a cynic. You become a cynic.
Oh, yeah.
Right? So I think one of the big things, that was one of the biggest challenges that we faced, is getting people to believe that, yes, we are actually going to bring in a big class. Yes, we're actually going to hit our enrollment numbers. Yes, we're going to do this thing, because we've heard it so many times before. And so the way we overcame that is we were just upfront and honest. Right? And we told people, this is what we're going to do. And we kept people up to date. And I kindly, one of my favorite movies in the world is Rocky IV. And at the end of Rocky IV, when Rocky's I saw a lot of changes in this round, the way you feel. That's what I noticed when I would go to faculty meetings. The early faculty meetings, the faculty would sit there and just look at me like I was crazy. But as I started reporting numbers and how we're ahead and where we're trending at, all of a sudden there's this buy-in. And as they get the buy-in, then all of a sudden, people are coming up to me, hey, what's our number today? What's our number today? And now there's a pulse on campus that, yes, we're going to hit these numbers and we're going to do what we need to do. And and then when move-in day happened, because again, I'm still a cynic, and I don't count a student until I see the whites of their eyes on move-in day. Right? And then I don't count them until ad drop day.
Exactly.
Right? Census day.
Census day, let's make sure they're there.
Yeah. So, but there was a palpable feeling on campus when all these students are moving in and we're at orientations and we're getting these, that they finally started believing. So I think that was the hard part, is just keeping the course, making sure people are informed, being open and honest, and then let the data and let the results do the talking, and then people buy in.
Yeah, that's great. That's great.
Jeremy, if we could change our attention to the demographic trends. Now, as you described Defiance and being in the Midwest and the size of it, your school would be the description that most would say would be most affected by the enrollment cliff. So would like to know, has those demographic trends affected Defiance College, and in what ways are you taking to combat that if they are?
Yeah, I think, in the enrollment world, the demographic cliff is the scary monster that's chasing everybody through the woods, right? Everyone is scared of it. I look at it as an opportunity, right? Because the demographic cliff, if you just look at it and say, oh yeah, we're going to lose all these students and there's not going to be that many high school graduating students. When you actually look at the data and you segment it out, there's some populations that are growing. The Hispanic population is growing. The multiracial population is growing. Matter of fact, I think I looked at the latest data from Wiki, and it was saying that by 2040, there's going to be 68% more multiracial high school graduates than there are now. So what we are doing is we're looking at the different markets, right? We're looking at markets and figuring out where we can go and what, because if you look at everything in a macro perspective, you will think that the demographic cliff is going to affect everybody nationwide at the same time, right? But there are areas where the population is growing. So what we're focusing on, I went back and I looked at places where they were building like junior high buildings like 4 years ago, right? Where are they building new high schools? Where are immigrant populations coming in? Where are people coming in? And we're really actively hitting and recruiting those markets. So, like, for example, in Ohio, some of the high growth areas are like in the Cincinnati area, the Dayton area, where there's a large influx of immigrant population, new people moving in there, new population moving because that's where businesses are expanding. Cleveland, those kind of areas that we hadn't traditionally gone to. Defiance had been very provincial and really focused on the 7-county area.
Yeah.
Now we look at things and we're going into the markets where we know that population is increasing. So again, maybe I'm Pollyannish and maybe I'm naive, but I look at the demographic cliff not as a challenge, but as an opportunity.
I think that's such a really good way to look at it, because it's one thing I've been arguing is that, so much of the one of the fastest growing populations outside of the locations is just the demographic of first generation Hispanic students.
Absolutely.
And that's why if you don't have a plan, or if you don't have some of your materials in Spanish that mom and dad who are not native Spanish, not English speakers, that they can still look at it, because it's a family decision. And so you've got to understand not only where the opportunities are, but what are the cultural aspects of how do they make decisions? How are they engaging in that? What are you doing as an institution to help them feel more comfortable with their student attending a place like Defiance as opposed to Ohio State or someone else that is actually trying to make that happen? So yeah, I think that idea is such a really good perspective that you have, Jeremy, that it is an opportunity. So how do you kind of make sure that your teams are focused on things like that, and they're adaptable to those new ways of approaching things? I mean, certainly that's not just something that they're just going to pick up. You've got to do some intentional things on that. So how are you doing that when you tell somebody, hey, instead of going the next county over, I'm sending you to Cleveland next week?
Well, absolutely. So one of the things that we did is we absolutely changed our entire territory management model. Traditionally, I know a lot of schools, what they do is they just divide up the state and they divide up this different out-of-state. So what we've done is we've gone to like a zone approach. So we have zone 1 is our local 7-county, like the local 50-mile radius. And so every admissions counselor has a segment of that local zone, right? Then we look at data and we divide up the state into zone 2. So everybody has a different part of the state. But what we do is we look at, when we're going to fairs, we look at past fairs. Everybody does a report on every fair that they attend. And we also look at the data of where have we gone, right? One of the things I did, and Bart, I got you to thank for this. I took my entire funnel history for the past 10 years, removed all identifying information, and loaded it into AI, and I said, give me the top 10 high schools that I pull students from in the state of Ohio. Tell me, where do I pull, like if we're trying to build up our education program, I can pull it up and say, tell me where I've gotten my education majors from. What high schools have we gotten the most, do we have the best yield from? Using those kind of tools and analyzing our data, that is where, that has been the most important thing. And so when we talk to our counselors and we're planning out our travel and we're trying to figure out where we're going to go, then we look at the data and we say, okay, look, we went here last year, we didn't get anything out of this, right? Yeah. But we now have this many inquiries coming in. So we absolutely do that. It's just, we look at data. The other thing too is I believe that even though I'm the Vice President of Enrollment Management, it's important for me to know what's going on. So I go out on the road. I go to fairs. And people look at me like I'm half crazy because I have, they why are you at a fair? The counselors sometimes are scared because they spy and tell their boss. But I don't know what I don't know.
Yeah.
So, like, for example, if there's a new fair or something like that, or a new area, I might go out there just to see, hey, is this somewhere that we can actually yield students? Also, too, I think that helps the counselors knowing that I'm going out, because I've gone to fairs and I've come back with 0, right? And so they know that if I'm getting the same kind of results, then we're all in this together.
Yeah.
So, it's an all hands-on approach. We look at data. And I really trust my counselors. If they tell me, I went to this fair and there was nothing but 8th graders. I love an 8th grader, right? I mean, I think they're great, but we need to be focusing our time in the fall looking for seniors.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I just want to stop and just kind of make sure that the listener heard what you talked about. I mean, you're not going to institutional research. I mean, you might be, but the fact that you're just going in and grabbing, what I told you about at that conference and demoed. Take your existing data, export it out of Slate or Element or whatever you guys are using, export it out, get rid of the personalized stuff, stick it into ChatGPT and start talking to it.
That's exactly it.
It's that simple. And I just want people to understand that there is no excuse for you to say, I don't have data. I can't figure out how to get my data. I don't have my person who's the AIR. They can't get back to me for 6 months. No, that doesn't exist anymore. So I applaud you for that, and applaud you for also being humble enough to say, I don't know what I don't know, and figuring out how to do that. So that's good stuff.
Yeah. We definitely do not have an institutional researcher. Not at all. Right? And so, and particularly, there's a lot of schools like us that are, that are limited on resources and trying to figure out how the best way to do it. And yes, those kind of things using ChatGPT, using the technology that's available.
You got to be scrappy.
Yeah. I mean, when you also mentioned the thing about being able to talk to, have your materials in Spanish. We're buying a set of those earbuds, the translation.
The translator that I showed,
stuff. Because, again, that's the difference between providing great customer service. If a family and a mother and a father can sit there and listen and be part of the conversation without their child having to translate, that right there will be enough to get a student to say, this is the place that I want to be at. Because if I care enough about them at a visit, then I'm going to care enough about them while they go through their 4 years. So,
mic drop. We're done. This is great.
Oh, my goodness. So, Jeremy, there's only so much capacity that a team has. So would like to know, how do you balance the innovative recruitment techniques that you get from your fairy godfather, Bart Kaler, while maintaining those traditional methods that resonate with the Defiance College's values?
I mean, I think one of the things, and this is my matrix this is the I guess the guidepost that I use for everything, right? We are a mission-driven institution. And so the number one thing that I look at is this going to align with our mission, right? If it aligns with our mission, then the next step I ask myself is it in the best needs of the students? Is it in the best interest of the students? Because yes, we want to generate revenue. We want to generate revenue. We want to bring in students. But ultimately, what I see myself as is an opportunity to create social change, right? Because if a student gets a college degree, that is the number one way of social mobility for those students. And so particularly first generation students whose parents may not have ever navigated the college experience, or they're navigating it on their own, right? Being able to make sure that, one, we're doing things ethical, we're doing things by our mission, and we're doing it in the best interest of the student. If we can help that student get a college degree, we're not only changing their life, but we're changing their family tree. Because then they're going to be able to do things. So when we're talking about the stuff that we're going to do, that's going to that yes, it may seem innovative, or it may seem innovative, may seem counterintuitive to what traditional practices are. We're doing it because it's in the best interest of the student and it meets our mission. And so if you keep those two things in mind, whatever your institution is, whatever your business is, then you're always going to be successful. right? And you're always going to stay close to the family, to the traditional ties, right?
Yep.
Of what the college is supposed to be doing. So that's kind of the way we look at that. And I know that seems like a politician answer, but like it really is that's the way we do it. And and that comes from our president. Our president is all about mission.
Well, I was going to say, I could listen to you preach all day. This is great. So I'm ready to pass the plate. This is awesome stuff. So I think that, one thing that's clear is when you're talking about all this stuff, Jeremy, and I love the fact that you keep going back to your team. You keep going back to your mission, keep going back to just that foundation. I'd love to hear more about how you guys have built and supported that team through all these changes, through all these challenges. I mean, certainly your president has been a big driver of that since he tapped you, and you've been able to do some things on that. But how do you break down those silos between, the different parts of even your own department with financial aid and with admissions, but across the campus to really create that unified enrollment activities?
Yeah. So, I mean, one thing is like we have built a really great team here. I think my longest tenured admissions counselor has been here 2 years.
Yeah.
Came in about the same time. So I'm talking about new to the enrollment industry. So we are all kind of new in the admissions team. I've got some veterans in financial aid, and I trust my financial aid people. And so one of the things that we do is, one, I think hiring the right people is paramount, right? Like I hired my director of admissions doesn't have an admissions background just like me, but she worked for me before. And I knew that she understood the value, she understood the work ethic. I could train her on the systems of our enrollment stuff, right? And so, but she came in with the same vision of mission. What's in the best interest of the student? Those are the things that we ask anybody that we hire. And even though I trust my director of admissions, my director of financial aid, director of marketing, director of conference events, those are all the areas that report to me, I trust them implicitly. But I still want to meet anybody that's going to join our team, just to make sure that that we are all on the same page. So we made a really good culture in our team. And then, like, I know in higher ed, silos are huge, right? Academic affairs, admissions, student life, athletics. Everyone wants to be protective of resources. No one wants to work together. Our cabinet, I think, is really great that we really work together. Particularly in admissions, because we're so closely tied with athletics as well. Me and the athletic director came in at the same time I did. And I think I talked to her more than my wife, right? Like
Be careful.
We're constantly in communication. And what we do in the past, what has always been this kind of like athletics and admissions are kind of butting heads about who am I going to get credit for? Who's getting credit for this student, right? Well, now we have clearly defined goals. Me and the athletic director provide a unified front. We're on the same page. I go meet with her team. She meets with my team.
Love that.
And we are all rowing in the same direction. And so even from our president has aligned our cabinet so that we all come together and we constantly are sharing data. Right?
That's awesome.
We constantly share data. You can ask anybody on cabinet and most staff how many deposits we have today, and they will tell you, right? Because we all know that we have to work together. And so I think that this kind of like rebuild or this restructure has kind of really opened Defiance's eyes and allowed us to kind of come together and just circle the wagons, work together, and reach success.
That's awesome. And I know you're going on about 2.5 years now with this new, you being in the role and you kind of doing those things. I'm sure that it's had its toll because, I mean, there's a lot of change, and when change happens, it's exhausting. How are you guys protecting against burnout? Not only your team, but also the cabinet. I mean, there's a lot of intensity. Yeah.
I mean, one thing that most people don't know is I used to have a full fro, right? Like, I had a glorious jazz
Me too.
fro when I started this job. No, I mean, one of the things is too, like, again, yes, there's a lot of pressure, right? 90% of the revenue for the college comes through my office.
Yeah.
And so one of the things that I really try to do is work with my staff and make sure that, yes, I've got to worry about discount rate. I've got to worry about bringing in revenue. I've got to worry about where are we going to get these students from, right? But I want our team to feel relaxed, and I want them to know I have their back.
Yeah.
And so we try to keep it fun, right? We have a lot of fun in our office. We laugh a lot. We celebrate the successes, right? And then sometimes it's just, it could be a rough day, and I'll just say, let's shut the office down, and then I'll take the whole team across the street to the coffee shop, and we'll go get coffee, right?
Yep.
Just to calm down. We have a great group chat. And so, whenever, we get a deposit, it's something stupid I do is I have a gif of somebody banging a gong, right?
Yeah, that's
but
awesome.
they know that if we bang a gong, we're going to celebrate those successes and those deposits. So I think as long, what we do to try to prevent burnout is, one, I make people take their time, right? And then two, we try to have fun with it, right? And they know that we're all in this together. It is not like I'm sitting there saying, you go to this fair and you come back with nothing, your head's on the line, right? There's no Alec Baldwin and Glenn Ross speech of always be closing, right? We are in this and we're being supportive with each other. So, yes, it's stressful, but I think too, and again, I think going out on the road and going to fairs and being in a hotel for 10 nights in a row, that I think that helps keep me grounded so that it helps me relate more with our staff. And so, I think that's just part of my leadership style. I'm not a sit behind the desk kind of guy. And I think we all kind of got to be in this together, kind of lead together.
Yeah, and I guess that's part of the follow-up question I was going to do on. You kind of just answered it there, was the idea of really making sure that your team is flexible and adaptive. It comes from the leader. I mean, you've got to first be flexible and adaptive because, I've seen too many people who've been in the role for 10, 15, 20 years that they do just say, hey, come back and let me know how you're doing. But I love the fact that you're down in the trenches, going to the fairs, going there and showing them, leading by example. And I'm sure that, that comes down from being a coach. It comes down from being a professor. Maybe just kind of tease that out for a second.
Yeah, I think that's just kind of my work. That's just kind of the way I was, that I want to see our leaders do it. Again, our president is not afraid to get down in the dirt and do work with us, right? So I just think that I never want to ask my team to do anything that I wouldn't do, right? And so, again, a perfect example, right? Perfect example is my staff kept saying, or my team, they'd be out at a fair and they were saying, we got to figure out a way to talk about our scholarships. We still need to make sure that people understand kind of how our merit scholarships work because they're competitive. And so being out on the road, I saw some things that other people were doing. And then we came together and we designed a little pop-up that talked about, hey, if you're admitted, this is your automatic scholarship. That right there, being out on the road, listening to what the team is saying, seeing it in action, helped us. And that has really helped us a lot because I'll get students to apply. They're wait, if I apply and I get accepted, I get this? Yes. Those kind of things help us to just be successful, right?
Yeah, perfect.
You can't, there's the art and there's the science of admissions. You got to be able to do both of them, right? The science is the data and knowing where to go, but there's also the art. And you won't know the art unless you're out there and you're able to see kind of what's going on.
I love it. Congratulations on all that. This is awesome.
Jeremy, you've shared a lot with us in a very compelling way. Would like to ask our final question to you, and that is, for institutions that may be facing similar challenges, what do you think the most critical first step to take would be?
I think the most critical first step is to take a hard, long look at yourself. Do a self-evaluation. If you're facing a challenge of low enrollment, high discount rate, you got to ask yourself why. What are the root causes of that situation, right? Is it because we're still holding on to the same school that we were 20 years ago?
Yep.
Do we still have the same standards? Are we still doing the same thing that we did 15 years ago and we haven't adapted for the time? For us, we had gotten away from doing the basic things that needed to be done. Traveling to the right places, providing great customer service, developing relationships with students, and building a strong financial aid matrix to leverage our institutional aid to make it affordable. Those are the things that we were doing that needed to be corrected. And by looking at that and making sure that we understood what those problems were, that allowed us to make the change. If we would have sugarcoated and said, hey, there's nothing wrong with us, there's just a problem with the market, then what we would have done is gone out and hired a bunch of consultants to come in and tell me, hey, these are the things you need to do. You need to buy 100,000 names. You need to do this. You need to do that. Right? But by looking at ourselves, we were able to figure out what the systemic roots of our issues were, fix those problems. Anything else is just you're putting a Band-Aid on a bad artery. Right? So we need that. I think understanding who you are as an institution now and figuring out how to fix it, like what those actual problems are, will allow you to kind of see a quick return on your investment. And again, we're in year 2, and like our numbers right now, we're trending ahead of last year. Again, I'm cautiously optimistic, and I'm very superstitious about some stuff, but like it's demonstrating that we're on the right path.
Good.
We're still going to have to adjust. There's still going to be pitfalls, and rocks that we got to jump over. But at least we're on the right path to hit towards our goal. And so I think that's kind of, to me, that would be the number one advice. Do a good self-evaluation.
Awesome.
Hard work pays off, Jeremy, and I look forward to you confirming those numbers later on this spring. I'm going to follow up with you.
All right.
Everyone, yes. We've been talking with Jeremy Taylor. He is the Vice President of Enrollment Management at Defiance College. Jeremy, for those who would like to continue or maybe have a conversation with you after listening to this episode, what would be the best way for them to get in contact with you?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I'm available. They can shoot me an email at jtaylor@defiance.edu. I'm on the directory. Actually, I even published my number on the directory. So, feel free. Give me a call, 419-783-2305. Right?
Awesome.
Like I'm out there. They can also hit me up on LinkedIn. I'm on there as well too. So I would love to talk to anybody because again, in my new role, I'm still learning how to be an enrollment person. I'm only in my second year in enrollment management, but so I'd love to learn from other people. So yeah, I look forward to talking to anybody.
That's awesome.
Wonderful. Thank you once again. And Bart, do you have any thoughts that you would like to share before we close the show?
Yeah, I just want to kind of, this has been such a great conversation. Thank you, Jeremy, for taking the time. And it's been one of those things that I'm always reminded sometimes when I see bold, courageous leadership. And I see that not only with Jeremy and what he's done, but with the president and the board. I think that's one of the things that if you're not practicing and repping that and building those muscles, now's the time to do it. Now's the time to start being more bold and courageous. Now, certainly back that up with data. I mean, we talked a lot about data. You can't just go out there and be willy-nilly and say, I'm going to be bold and just go jump off a cliff. You've got to start backing that up with data. And so if you don't have your data, start figuring out how to assemble it. You do have it. It's buried in your CRM. It's around campus. It's in your SIS. Get an export of it and start playing with it. Start asking the questions in ChatGPT. And if you haven't already figured out, we've got an AI summit coming up. I don't know when this will drop. It might be past that, Troy. But we do have an AI summit coming out. And if you missed it, reach out to me. I'll make sure that you can get access to it. But that's something there. And I love the fact that you're kind of following those marketing trends. They're doing a lot of that, kind of figuring out in their data, saying, oh, we need to be at the fairs in Cleveland as opposed to just the ones in the local 7 counties. So I really like that. And I also just really like making sure you've got the right people in the right seats. And that starts with your mission fit people. If you know anything about me, I'm all about mission fit students, mission fit staff and teams and things like that. And so really think that the fact that they've pulled together those people that build trust and that are on the same page with your mission, I think is a really critical thing. So Jeremy, thanks again for the time today. It's been a pleasure and really looking forward to your continued success.
Thank you.
To our listeners, thank you so much for listening to the Higher Ed Marketer Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to the show, leave us a review, and then share it with your colleagues in higher ed. And don't forget to follow us on LinkedIn at the Higher Ed Marketer for more updates and insights. The Higher Ed Marketer podcast is powered by Kaler Solutions, your go-to partner for higher ed mission-fit marketing strategies, including websites, right, Bart?
That's right.
Enrollment, and your branding needs. And sponsored by Ring Digital, direct mail done digitally, putting you in front of your exact ideal prospects and inquiries with provable, measurable increases in applications and yield. Until next time, wishing everyone happiness and success in higher ed.